Commander Hannah Park gripped the edge of the console as Orbital Defense Station Sentinel-7 shuddered around her. Through the reinforced viewports, the blue-green surface of Nuterra, humanity's most successful colony and home to 12 million people, was being systematically destroyed by alien weapons fire. "Status report," she ordered, her voice tight but controlled. Lieutenant Ta Kim looked up from his station, his face pale. "Colony defenses failing, Commander. Shield grid at 24% and dropping. Ground batteries mostly silent." Hannah had been awake for 36 hours straight, ever since the alien fleet had appeared without warning at the edge of the system. The attackers had ignored all attempts at communication, brushing aside the colony's modest defensive fleet like toys before beginning their assault on the planet itself. "Do we have identification on the enemy ships yet?" she asked, turning to Science Officer Jun Lee. Jun nodded grimly. "Confirmed match with records of Galactic Concordat vessels, Commander. 7 distinct ship designs corresponding to the 7 species in their alliance." Hannah's jaw tightened. The Concordat was known only through distant observations and intercepted communications. Humanity had never had direct contact with them before today. A brilliant flash of light from the planet's surface temporarily blinded everyone on the command deck. The station's protective filters kicked in automatically, dimming the viewports. "What was that?" Hannah demanded. Jun's fingers flew over his console. "Some kind of directed tectonic weapon. They've targeted the Shin fault line." His voice cracked. "Commander, they're breaking the planet apart." On the main display, seismic readings spiked off the charts. Massive fissures were opening across Nuterra's continents. In the major cities, buildings were collapsing. Millions of people who had survived the initial orbital bombardment were now facing extinction. "This is genocide," whispered Ta. Hannah made the hardest decision of her career. "Sound evacuation orders. We can't save the planet. We need to get as many people off-world as possible." She turned to Communications Officer Min Cho. "Send emergency transmission to Earth. Include all sensor data and visual records." The next 12 hours were a nightmare. Sentinel-7 had become the coordination center for the desperate evacuation effort. They had less than 50 ships capable of planetary escape, most of them civilian vessels never designed for mass evacuation. Hannah watched the casualty numbers climb on her tablet. 10 million dead. Then 11. The Concordat ships methodically destroyed any settlement they detected, targeting escape vessels whenever they launched. "Commander, we've lost contact with the southern continent," reported Min. Last transmission indicated complete structural collapse of the capital city. Hannah nodded numbly. "How many have we evacuated?" "Just over 8,000, said Ta. "Most ships didn't make it past the blockade." A proximity alarm blared through the command center. Jun looked up with wide eyes. 3 Concordat vessels on approach vector to the station. "They've spotted us." "Prepare the Harbinger for immediate departure," ordered Hannah. "Transfer all survivors from the station. Download complete sensor records to the ship's computers." A Harbinger was Sentinel-7's attached emergency vessel, a fast courier ship designed to maintain communication lines if the station was ever compromised. It wasn't meant to carry more than 20 people, but they would have to make it work. "What about defensive measures?" asked Ta. Hannah shook her head. "The station's weapons are nothing against those ships. Our only hope is to escape with the evidence." She tapped her comm unit. "All personnel, this is Commander Park. Proceed immediately to Docking Bay 3 for emergency evacuation. This is not a drill." As the command staff rushed to comply, Hannah downloaded a complete copy of the station's sensor data to a portable drive. This information was now the most important thing in human space, proof of an unprovoked attack that had killed nearly 12 million colonists. The corridors of Sentinel-7 were chaotic as the remaining 200 station personnel and the few thousand refugees they'd managed to rescue crowded toward the evacuation ship. Parents clutched children, medical staff guided the injured, and security officers maintained what order they could. The station rocked violently as the first alien shots struck its outer hull. "They're targeting the reactor core," reported Chief Engineer Han Su over the comm. "Structural integrity at 63% and falling." Hannah reached the docking bay just as another hit sent people sprawling across the deck. The Harbinger waited, its boarding ramp already crowded with desperate people. "Get aboard," she shouted, helping a fallen woman to her feet. "Move quickly." The station's emergency lighting switched to red as primary power failed. Gravity fluctuated momentarily before the backup systems engage. "Commander," called June from the Harbinger's hatch. "We need to launch now." Hannah did a quick head count as the last group of refugees boarded. They had maybe 300 people crammed into a ship designed for 20. It would be uncomfortable and dangerous, but they might survive. "Everyone's aboard," she confirmed, stepping onto the ramp herself. As she did, a final devastating blow struck the station. The docking clamps holding the Harbinger released prematurely, and the ship lurched away from the station. Hannah leaped for the closing hatch, her fingers barely catching the edge. For a terrifying moment, she hung in space, the void beneath her feet. Then June and Ta grabbed her arms, hauling her inside as the hatch sealed. "Get us out of here," she gasped as they helped her to the bridge. The Harbinger's pilot, Lieutenant Jun Park, was already executing evasive maneuvers as the Concordat ships turned their attention to the fleeing vessel. "FTL drive charging," Jun reported. 60 seconds to jump capability. Through the viewport, Hannah watched as Sentinel-7 broke apart, debris scattering across space. Below, New Terra's surface was a network of fiery cracks, its once blue oceans boiling away as the planet literally tore itself apart. "Energy spike from the lead enemy vessel," warned June. "They're targeting us." "Evasive pattern Delta," ordered Hannah. "We just need to survive 1 minute." The Harbinger shuddered as energy weapons grazed its hull. Warning lights flashed across the bridge console. "Hull breach on deck 2, reported Ta. "Emergency containment holding." 30 seconds to jump, said Jun, his hand steady on the controls despite the sweat beading his forehead. Hannah clutched the data drive containing evidence of the attack. If they didn't make it, humanity would never know what happened here. 20 seconds. Another hit rocked the ship. The lights flickered. 10 seconds. A final desperate evasive maneuver as the enemy weapons locked on. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Jump. The stars stretched into lines as the Harbinger leaked into FTL speed, leaving behind the burning remains of humanity's greatest colony and the monsters who had destroyed it. As the ship stabilized in faster-than-light travel, Hannah looked at the frightened, grief-stricken faces around her, the last survivors of New Terra. They carried with them not just the evidence of an atrocity, but something more dangerous, the seed of humanity's vengeance. Earth would know what happened here, and Earth would respond. The Harbinger limped into Earth orbit 3 weeks after escaping New Terra. The ship wasn't designed for so many passengers, and life support systems had nearly failed twice during the journey. Commander Hannah Park had lost 12 people to injuries sustained during their escape, but over 280 survivors had made it to Earth, the only remaining witnesses to the destruction of humanity's greatest colony. A fleet of medical and rescue vessels surrounded the Harbinger as it approached Earth's orbital command station. Hannah stood on the bridge, data drive clutched in her hand, her uniform wrinkled and stained after weeks without proper facilities. "Harbinger, this is Earth Command. You are cleared for emergency docking. Medical teams standing by," came the transmission. "Acknowledged," replied Lieutenant June. He looked over his shoulder at Hannah, his eyes hollow from weeks of minimal sleep. "We made it, Commander." Hannah nodded grimly. But 12 million didn't. The docking procedure went smoothly. As the airlock opened, Hannah was the first to step through, immediately confronted by a wall of military personnel and government officials. At their center stood a tall, serious-looking man with perfectly pressed uniform decorations that identified him as Admiral Sung Han, head of Earth's Defense Force. "Commander Park," he said, his voice deep and formal. "We received your transmission. The President is waiting." Within an hour, Hannah found herself in the United Earth Government's crisis chamber, a vast circular room deep beneath the surface of Seoul. 50 of the most powerful people on Earth sat around a gleaming table, their faces grave. At the head sat President Dae Park, a slender man with silver-streaked hair and eyes that reflected decades of political battles. "Commander, please present your evidence," the president said without preamble. Hannah inserted her data drive into the central console. The room darkened as holographic displays activated, showing the Concordat ship's arrival at New Terra, their methodical destruction of the defense fleet, and finally, the horrifying planetary bombardment that had cracked the world apart. Several officials gasped. One woman covered her mouth in shock. The images were undeniable and devastating. 12 million lives erased in a matter of hours. "The attackers are confirmed to be vessels of the Galactic Concordat," Hannah explained. "Based on our intelligence, they're an alliance of 7 advanced species with territory approximately 70 light-years from our furthest colonies." Defense Secretary Jin Kang leaned forward. "Was there any provocation? Any warning?" "None, sir," said Hannah. "They ignored all communication attempts. There was no declaration of hostilities. They simply arrived and began killing." The president's face was like stone. 12 million citizens, he said quietly. Men, women, children. An entire colony wiped out without provocation. "What options do we have?" asked the economic minister. "Our entire fleet consists of barely 50 combat-capable ships. If these Concordat forces decide to attack Earth..." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity's military power was concentrated in the Sol system, but even here, they couldn't hope to defeat an enemy capable of destroying planets. Hannah noticed Admiral Sung exchange a meaningful glance with the president. Something unspoken passed between them. The president nodded almost imperceptibly, then turned to the room. "Clear the chamber," he ordered. "Essential personnel only." There was a moment of confusion before officials began filing out. When only 10 people remained, the highest-ranking military and intelligence officers, the president activated a security field around the room. "What I'm about to share is classified at the highest level," he said. "For the past 70 years, Earth has been implementing what we call Protocol Lazarus, a contingency plan for exactly this type of existential threat." Admiral Sung stood and walked to the central display. "Commander Park, what do you know about Earth's military capabilities?" Hannah frowned. "We maintain a defense fleet of 53 warships, plus support vessels and orbital platforms." Sung's mouth curved in the ghost of a smile. "That's what everyone knows, what we've allowed to be known." He entered a command code into the system. The holographic display changed to show the solar system. Earth, Mars, the asteroid belt, the gas giants, and the Kuiper belt beyond. Then hundreds, thousands of small points of light began to appear throughout the display. "What are those?" asked Hannah. "Warships," said Admiral Sung simply. 600,000 of them. Gasps echoed around the room. "For 7 decades, we've been building in secret," Sung continued. "Every mining operation in the asteroid belt produced materials for 2 ships for everyone reported. Every research station in the Kuiper belt houses a squadron of stealth vessels. Even Mars Colony's southern hemisphere contains an underground shipyard 5 kilometers in diameter." Hannah stared in disbelief. How was this kept secret? "Compartmentalization," replied the president. "Only 20 people alive know the full scope. Each facility believes it's part of a much smaller program." "My predecessors were paranoid," said Admiral Sung without apology. "They believed humanity would eventually face an existential threat from beyond our borders. They began Protocol Lazarus as insurance, hidden strength that could be revealed when needed." The display zoomed in to show one of the concealed vessels. It was sleek, angular, and unlike any public military ship Hannah had seen. "Our public military technology is deliberately outdated. explained Sung. The Lazarus fleet incorporates technologies that have been developed in Black Labs over decades: quantum entanglement weapons, consciousness transfer systems for pilots, and FTL drives 3 times faster than anything publicly known. We've been called wasteful, paranoid, and worse, said the president. Budget inquiries, investigations, we weathered them all to maintain the secret. He looked directly at Hannah. And now, it seems our paranoia was justified. Hannah's mind raced with implications. You're saying we can fight back. We're saying we can win, corrected Admiral Sung. But we need information about our enemy. Your sensor data will be invaluable. For the first time since New Terra's destruction, Hannah felt something other than grief and rage. She felt hope. When do we start? She asked. President Day stood, his decision made. Immediately, on authorizing full activation of Protocol Lazarus, he turned to his communications officer. Prepare a worldwide address. The people need to know what happened at New Terra, and that Earth will respond. As the officials dispersed to carry out their orders, Hannah found herself alone with Admiral Sung. Commander Park, he said quietly, would you be willing to take command of a strike group? Your first-hand knowledge of the enemy would be invaluable. Hannah thought of the 12 million dead, of the colony burning beneath her as the Harbinger escaped. Yes, Admiral, she replied. I want to be there when we find them. Across the solar system, hidden compartments began to open. Asteroids split apart to reveal fully armed battle cruisers. Moons shifted position as concealed shipyards activated. Orbital platforms transformed into command centers. Earth was awakening, and the galaxy would soon learn the terrible cost of provoking humanity. The massive Concordat diplomatic station orbited the gas giant Meridian, its crystalline spires gleaming in the distant starlight. Inside the Grand Chamber, Supreme Commander Vorax studied the formal communication from Earth with something approaching amusement. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence as he passed the document to his senior advisors. The humans have declared war, he announced to the assembled Concordat Council. 7 representatives, 1 from each species of the Alliance, shifted in their various seats and support apparatuses. War, echoed Delegate Moore of the aquatic trill species. Over 1 colony. Vorax made a dismissive gesture with one of his upper limbs. Their colony was in our expansion zone. The cleansing was standard procedure for primitive species encroachment. Ambassador Su Yun stood silently at the far end of the chamber. As Earth's hastily recalled diplomat, she had delivered the declaration personally. She wore a simple gray suit, her posture perfect despite the gravity adjustments that made standing uncomfortable for humans in the Concordat station. Ambassador, said Vorax, his translator converting his clicks and whistles into human speech. Surely your government understands the futility of this gesture. Our intelligence reports indicate your species maintains fewer than 60 warships. None of them match even our patrol vessels in firepower. Sue's expression remained neutral. The destruction of New Terra was an unprovoked act of genocide against 12 million civilians. Earth demands justice. Justice, repeated Vorax, the word sounding strange through his translator. Your species has existed in space for barely a century. The Concordat has maintained galactic order for 50,000 years. We determine what constitutes justice. The chamber's massive display activated, showing the debris field that had once been New Terra. This was not justice, said Sue quietly. This was slaughter. A necessary correction, replied Vorax. Your expansion threatened established borders. We had no knowledge of your claimed territory. No contact was attempted before the attack. Vorax made the clicking sound his species used to indicate impatience. Contact with primitive species is not our protocol. Removal is simpler. Sue straightened, her composure never breaking. Then Earth's response should not surprise you. We too find that sometimes action speaks louder than words. With what forces? Vorax laughed, a harsh sound like grinding metal. Your military capabilities are thoroughly documented. Sue allowed herself a small, cold smile. Is that so? She turned to leave, pausing at the chamber door. We will speak again soon, Supreme Commander. Perhaps then you will listen more carefully. As she departed, the council erupted in dismissive chattering. Only the insectoid representative, Elder Kizik, seemed troubled. Supreme Commander, Kizik said, mandibles clicking. Humans are an unknown variable. Their psychological profiles indicate unusual adaptability and aggression when threatened. They are primitive apes with primitive ships, replied Vorax. Their declaration is meaningless. Across human space, the hidden fleet was awakening. On Mars, massive hangar doors concealed for decades slid open beneath the red dust. Throughout the asteroid belt, what appeared to be mining stations transformed, outer hulls falling away to reveal sleek warships. In the Kuiper belt, entire moons shifted position, revealing their true nature as massive shipyards. Aboard the newly commissioned flagship Retribution, Admiral Sung Han stood before a holographic display of Concordat space. The massive vessel, over 5 kilometers long, had been hidden inside what the public believed was a scientific research outpost on Pluto. Fleet activation at 67% and climbing, reported his executive officer. Estimated full deployment within 48 hours. Sung nodded, studying the strategic display. And the Concordat forces? No unusual activity detected. They appear unaware of our mobilization. Commander Hannah Park entered the bridge, now wearing the insignia of a strike group commander. The past month had changed her eyes harder, her movements more precise. She had spent every waking hour studying the enemy's tactics from the new Terra data. Admiral, she said, saluting. Strike Group Vengeance is fully operational. All 10,000 ships report ready status. Sung returned the salute. Excellent. Your group will lead the Alpha offensive. He gestured to the display where 7 Concordat worlds were highlighted. These are their core worlds, based on the intelligence we've gathered. Our plan is simultaneous strikes at all 7 systems. Hannah studied the tactical projections. Their response time. Unknown, admitted Sung. But we have 2 key advantages. First, complete surprise. They have no idea of our true strength. Second, their command structure is hierarchical to a fault. Take out their leadership, and their forces will be in disarray. A junior officer approached with a data tablet. Sir, the President's address has concluded. Global response is as expected, unified support for military action. On every screen across Earth and the colonies, President Da had revealed the truth about New Terra's destruction. The response was as immediate as it was unanimous. Humanity demanded retribution. Hannah turned to a secondary display, showing the special features of the Lazarus fleet ships. The quantum entanglement weapons have been tested in real combat conditions. Simulations only, admitted Sung. But the results are promising. The weapons ignore conventional shields, targeting the atomic structure directly. And the consciousness transfer systems for pilots. Fully operational. Pilots can neural link with their ships, experiencing them as extensions of their own bodies. Reaction times are increased by 400%. Hannah nodded, remembering the endless hours she'd spent in the neural simulators, learning to feel the ship as her own body. The technology was revolutionary and completely unknown to the Concordat. Across the bridge, officers coordinated the greatest military mobilization in human history. Ships were arranged into battle groups, weapons were brought online, and jump coordinates were calculated. Communication protocol for the operation? Asked Hannah. Total blackout, replied Sung. Once we begin the advance, no transmissions. We move as one force, striking simultaneously. The Concordat must have no warning. A message flashed on the main display. The final authorization from Earth. President De's signature, confirming the attack order. Admiral Sung faced the bridge crew. This is not just about revenge, he said, his voice steady. This is about survival. If we don't demonstrate our strength now, humanity will always be at risk. We strike hard, we strike fast, And we make it clear, Earth is not to be threatened again. He turned to Hana. Commander Park, prepare your strike group for departure. Target: Concordat homeworld Solaris Prime. Hana saluted. For New Terra, she said quietly. For New Terra, echoed the bridge crew. Throughout the solar system, the hidden fleet began to move. 600,000 warships, arranged in perfect formation, advanced toward Concordat space. The storm that had been gathering in secret for 70 years was finally breaking. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity was not a primitive species to be cleansed. It was a force of nature, awakened and unleashed. Supreme Commander Vorax was enjoying his rest cycle when the alarms began. The piercing sound cut through the atmospheric mist in his private chambers, jolting him from his meditative state. His personal communication device flashed with urgent priority markers. What is happening? He demanded as he activated the channel. The face of his second-in-command, Sub-Commander Elzin, appeared on the screen. His normally calm features were contorted with panic. Multiple attacks across all core systems, Commander. Human ships, thousands of them, have appeared simultaneously throughout Concordat space. Vorax felt a cold sensation spread through his body. Impossible. Their fleet consists of barely 60 vessels. Sir, we are tracking over 600,000 distinct human warships. They've bypassed our outer warning systems completely. The Supreme Commander rushed to his command center, his ceremonial robes forgotten as he moved through the corridors of the Concordat capital station. Officers from all 7 species hurried about in disorganized panic, a sight unprecedented in the carefully ordered Concordat military. The main strategic display showed nightmare scenarios unfolding across all 7 core worlds. Massive human fleets had appeared in perfect formation, engaging Concordat defenses with devastating efficiency. How did they hide such a force? Demanded Vorax. Our intelligence was wrong, interrupted Grand Strategist Kez, the normally reserved strategist abandoning protocol in a crisis. The humans concealed their true military capacity. These ships employ technologies we've never observed in their known vessels. On the primary display, footage showed human warships firing weapons that seemed to ignore Concordat shields entirely. Their vessels moved with impossible coordination, as though each fleet operated with a single mind. Establish contact with their command vessel, ordered Vorax. We must negotiate terms. They're ignoring all communication attempts, reported the communications officer. All channels remain silent. In the Solaris Prime system, Commander Hana Park stood on the bridge of her flagship, Vengeance. Through the neural interface, she didn't just command her ship, she was the ship. Every weapon system, every engine, every sensor existed as an extension of her consciousness. Around her, 10,000 vessels moved in perfect harmony, executing the attack plan with machine precision. Primary orbital defenses neutralized, reported her tactical officer. Ground installations targeting in progress. Hana felt a grim satisfaction as she directed the fleet's movements. Unlike the Concordat's attack on New Terra, her forces were specifically targeting military installations and command centers, avoiding civilian populations where possible. Strike Team Alpha, deploy to the surface, she ordered. Secure the planetary defense headquarters. Lieutenant Ta Kim, now her executive officer, approached with a data tablet. Commander, we're intercepting massive distress calls across all Concordat frequencies. They're completely disorganized. No coherent defense strategy. As expected, said Hana, their hierarchical command structure is failing. Each world is trying to defend itself independently. Across Concordat space, similar scenes played out as human strike groups systematically dismantled the alien defenses. 70 years of hidden preparation had created not just superior numbers but superior technology and tactics. In the capital system, Admiral Sung Han's flagship Retribution led the primary battle group toward the Concordat command station. His neural interface showed him real-time updates from all 7 battlefronts simultaneously. Admiral, reported his communications officer, We're receiving a transmission from the Concordat command station. Supreme Commander Vorax is requesting immediate ceasefire negotiations. Sung's expression remained impassive. Display the transmission. Vorax's alien features appeared on the main screen. Admiral Han, he said, his translator struggling to convey the proper tone. This unprovoked attack on peaceful Concordat worlds must cease immediately. We are prepared to discuss your grievances through proper diplomatic channels. Unprovoked, repeated Sung coldly. You destroyed a human colony with 12 million civilians without warning or provocation. You called it a cleansing of a primitive species. A regrettable misunderstanding, said Vorax. One world can be compensated for. But this is madness. You risk galactic stability with such overwhelming force. You risked galactic stability when you decided humanity was too primitive to deserve communication before extermination, replied Sung. We are not here to negotiate. Prepare to receive our terms of surrender. Vorax's 4 eyes blinked rapidly in distress. Surrender. The Concordat has stood for 50,000 years. We do not surrender to. Sung cut the transmission with a thought through his neural link. Continue the advance. Target their command station's defensive systems only. We want Vorax alive to sign the surrender documents. The Retribution's quantum entanglement weapons fired with surgical precision, disabling the station's shields and weapon emplacements without compromising its structural integrity. At Celaris Prime, Hannah's strike team had secured the planetary defense headquarters. She transferred her consciousness from the ship to her physical body and led a small team to the facility's command center. Inside, they found the Concordat planetary governor, a tall, willowy being with translucent skin, surrounded by his remaining staff. You are in violation of Concordat space, the governor declared, though his voice trembled. Hannah stepped forward. I am Commander Hannah Park of Earth. I was present at New Terra when your forces destroyed our colony without warning. I watched 12 million people die. The governor's luminescent eyes widened. New Terra. That was a simple border enforcement action. Standard protocol for primitive species. Hannah finished. Yes, we know your protocols. She gestured to her neural interface device. Do we still seem primitive to you? Throughout Concordat space, the reckoning continued. Human forces secured strategic positions with minimal casualties, a show of force rather than the genocide the Concordat had committed. On the Concordat capital station, Supreme Commander Vorax watched helplessly as human ships surrounded his command center. His once mighty fleet was scattered, his defenses neutralized, his confidence shattered. They were waiting. He realized aloud. All this time, they were preparing. A final transmission came through from Admiral Sung's flagship. The human admiral's face filled the screen, calm and resolute. Supreme Commander Vorax, your forces are defeated. Your core worlds are under our control. The Concordat, as you knew it, has ended. In 1 hour, I will arrive at your station to accept your formal surrender. As the transmission ended, Vorax slumped in his command chair. In a single day, humanity had done what no species had accomplished in 50,000 years. They had brought the mighty Concordat to its knees. And they had done it not with the 60 ships he had believed they possessed, but with 600,000 vessels that had remained hidden until the moment of reckoning arrived. Supreme Commander Vorax was enjoying his rest cycle when the alarms began. The piercing sound cut through the atmospheric mist in his private chambers, jolting him from his meditative state. His personal communication device flashed with urgent priority markers. What is happening? He demanded as he activated the channel. The face of his second-in-command, Sub-Commander Elzin, appeared on the screen. His normally calm features were contorted with panic. Multiple attacks across all core systems, Commander. Human ships, thousands of them, have appeared simultaneously throughout Concordat space. Vorax felt a cold sensation spread through his body. Impossible. Their fleet consists of barely 60 vessels. Sir, we are tracking over 600,000 distinct human warships. They've bypassed our outer warning systems completely. The Supreme Commander rushed to his command center, his ceremonial robes forgotten as he moved through the corridors of the Concordat capital station. Officers from all 7 species hurried about in disorganized panic, a sight unprecedented in the carefully ordered Concordat military. The main strategic display showed nightmare scenarios unfolding across all 7 core worlds. Massive human fleets had appeared in perfect formation, engaging Concordat defenses with devastating efficiency. How did they hide such a force? Demanded Vorax. Our intelligence was wrong, interrupted Grand Strategist Kez, the normally reserved strategist abandoning protocol in the crisis. The humans concealed their true military capacity. These ships employ technologies we've never observed in their known vessels. On the primary display, footage showed human warships firing weapons that seemed to ignore Concordat shields entirely. Their vessels moved with impossible coordination, as though each fleet operated with a single mind. Establish contact with their command vessel, ordered Vorax. We must negotiate terms. They're ignoring all communication attempts, reported the communications officer. All channels remained silent. In the Xylaris Prime system, Commander Hannah Park stood on the bridge of her flagship, Vengeance. Through the neural interface, she didn't just command her ship. She was the ship. Every weapons system, every engine, every sensor existed as an extension of her consciousness. Around her, 10,000 vessels moved in perfect harmony, executing the attack plan with machine precision. Primary orbital defenses neutralized, reported her tactical officer. Ground installations targeting in progress. Hannah felt a grim satisfaction as she directed the fleet's movements. Unlike the Concordat's attack on New Terra, her forces were specifically targeting military installations and command centers, avoiding civilian populations where possible. Strike Team Alpha, deploy to the surface, she ordered. Secure the planetary defense headquarters. Lieutenant Ta Kim, now her executive officer, approached with a data tablet. Commander, we're intercepting massive distress calls across all Concordat frequencies. They're completely disorganized, no coherent defense strategy. As expected, said Hannah, their hierarchical command structure is failing. Each world is trying to defend itself independently. Across Concordat space, similar scenes play out as human strike groups systematically dismantle the alien defenses. 70 years of hidden preparation had created not just superior numbers, but superior technology and tactics. In the capital system, Admiral Sung Han's flagship Retribution led the primary battle group toward the Concordat command station. His neural interface showed him real-time updates from all 7 battlefronts simultaneously. Admiral, reported his communications officer, we're receiving a transmission from the Concordat command station. Supreme Commander Vorax is requesting immediate ceasefire negotiations. Sung's expression remained impassive. Display the transmission. Vorax's alien features appeared on the main screen. Admiral Han, he said, his translator struggling to convey the proper tone. This unprovoked attack on peaceful Concordat worlds must cease immediately. We are prepared to discuss your grievances through proper diplomatic channels. Unprovoked, repeated Sung coldly. You destroyed a human colony with 12 million civilians without warning or provocation. You called it a cleansing of a primitive species. A regrettable misunderstanding, said Vorax. One world can be compensated for. But this is madness. You risk galactic stability with such overwhelming force. You risked galactic stability when you decided humanity was too primitive to deserve communication before extermination, replied Sung. We are not here to negotiate. Prepare to receive our terms of surrender. Vorax's 4 eyes blinked rapidly in distress. Surrender. The Concordat has stood for 50,000 years. We do not surrender to. Sung cut the transmission with a thought through his neural link. Continue the advance. Target their command station's defensive systems only. We want Vorax alive to sign the surrender documents. The Retribution's quantum entanglement weapons fired with surgical precision, disabling the station's shields and weapon emplacements without compromising its structural integrity. At Solaris Prime, Hannah's strike team had secured the planetary defense headquarters. She transferred her consciousness from the ship to her physical body and led a small team to the facility's command center. Inside, they found the Concordat planetary governor, a tall, willowy being with translucent skin, surrounded by his remaining staff. "You are in violation of Concordat space," the governor declared, though his voice trembled. Hannah stepped forward. "I am Commander Hannah Park of Earth. I was present at New Terra when your forces destroyed our colony without warning. I watched 12 million people die." The governor's luminescent eyes widened. New Terra, that was a simple border enforcement action. Standard protocol for primitive species. Hannah finished. "Yes, we know your protocols." She gestured to her neural interface device. "Do we still seem primitive to you?" Throughout Concordat space, the reckoning continued. Human forces secured strategic positions with minimal casualties, a show of force rather than the genocide that Concordat had committed. On the Concordat capital station, Supreme Commander Vorax watched helplessly as human ships surrounded his command center. His once mighty fleet was scattered, his defenses neutralized, his confidence shattered. They were waiting, he realized aloud. All this time, they were preparing. A final transmission came through from Admiral Sung's flagship. The human admiral's face filled the screen, calm and resolute. "Supreme Commander Vorax, your forces are defeated. Your core worlds are under our control. The Concordat, as you knew it, has ended. In 1 hour, I will arrive at your station to accept your formal surrender." As the transmission ended, Vorax slumped in his command chair. In a single day, humanity had done what no species had accomplished in 50,000 years. They had brought the mighty Concordat to its knees. And they had done it not with the 60 ships he had believed they possessed, but with 600,000 vessels that had remained hidden until the moment of reckoning arrived. The formal surrender of the Galactic Concordat took place aboard the Retribution 14 days after the initial human attack. The massive conference room, hastily converted from a secondary command center, was filled with representatives from all 7 Concordat species along with human military and government officials. Admiral Sung Han sat at the head of the gleaming black table, his uniform impeccable, his expression unreadable. To his right sat President Dai Park, who had made the unprecedented decision to leave Earth during wartime to personally witness this historic moment. Supreme Commander Vorax entered last, his once proud posture now stooped, his ceremonial armor dulled and chipped, a deliberate choice to show the fallen status of his people. He took his place at the opposite end of the table, flanked by the 7 representatives of the Concordat Council. "This assembly is now in session," announced Admiral Sung. "We are here to formalize the unconditional surrender of the Galactic Concordat to the United Earth Government." President Day nodded to an aide, who distributed data tablets to each Concordat representative. "These are our terms. They are non-negotiable." Vorax's 4 eyes blinked in sequence as he reviewed the document. "These demands are extensive. They are merciful," corrected the president. "Unlike your attack on New Terra, we did not destroy your worlds. We did not slaughter your civilians. We targeted your military capabilities only." Commander Hannah Park stood against the wall behind Admiral Sung, watching Vorax closely. The alien commander who had so casually authorized the deaths of 12 million humans now looked diminished, uncertain. "Item 1, began President Dae, "full reparations for the destruction of New Terra, to be paid over 50 Earth years. Item 2, those directly responsible for ordering the attack will face justice under human law." Vorax's skin paled visibly. "That would include me and my senior command staff." "Yes," said Hannah, speaking for the first time. "It would." "Item 3, continued the president, "all Concordat worlds will accept human oversight for a minimum of 100 years. Your military will be disbanded. Your technology will be shared. Your borders will be determined by human authorities. One of the Concordat representatives, a crystalline being that communicated through light patterns, flashed rapidly in what human translators interpreted as outrage. You cannot expect us to surrender 50,000 years of autonomy, the translator voiced. The Concordat has ruled this sector since before humans discovered fire. Admiral Sung leaned forward slightly. And yet here we are. Your great Concordat fell in less than 2 weeks against a species you deemed too primitive to contact before attempting to exterminate. You deceived us, said Vorax bitterly. You hid your true strength. We prepared, corrected Hana. There's a difference. The discussion continued for hours as each point of the surrender terms was reviewed. By the end, the reality had sunk in for the Concordat representatives. Their power was broken, their authority ended. One by one, they placed their biological signatures on the document. Vorax was the last to sign. As he pressed his upper appendage against the authentication pad, he looked directly at President Da. You have destroyed 50,000 years of order and stability. What will replace it? Justice, replied the president simply. Something your Concordat never truly understood. 3 months later, Hana stood on the broken surface of New Terra. The planet had stabilized somewhat after the Concordat attack, though massive cracks still mirrored its once beautiful continents. The atmosphere had thinned but remained breathable with assistance. Around her, construction drones and human workers labored on a massive memorial, a monument of black stone rising from the fractured landscape. Etched into its surface were 12 million names, each one a life erased by the Concordat's cleansing. Admiral Sung joined her, looking out over the devastation. The formal military operation had ended, but the work of rebuilding humanity's place in the galaxy had just begun. Construction of the new colony begins next month, he said, following her gaze across the damaged terrain. The president believes rebuilding here will be a powerful statement that humanity will not be broken. Hana nodded, and the Concordat whirls, adapting to the new reality, some better than others. Sung's expression was thoughtful. We've discovered they weren't as united as they appeared. The lesser species in their alliance were often treated poorly. Some are actually welcoming human oversight as an improvement. And Vorax. His trial begins next week. The evidence is overwhelming. They stood in silence for a moment, watching as workers carefully placed a section of the memorial bearing the names of families who had lived in New Terra's capital city. What happens now? Asked Hana finally. We've shown the galaxy our strength. Is that enough to keep us safe? Some turned to look at a landing pad where a sleek new vessel was touching down, one of the newly commissioned ships built using a combination of human innovation and Concordat technology. That's why production continues, he said. 600,000 ships was enough this time. We'll have twice that number within a decade. He gestured toward the stars. The Concordat controlled just one sector of the galaxy. There are other powers out there, some perhaps even more dangerous. So we prepare again, said Hana, understanding. Always. Sung nodded, but differently this time. No more secrets. Humanity stands united and visible now. Our strength is a warning to any who might consider us easy prey. On distant worlds throughout former Concordat space, alien populations were adjusting to the new order. Human administrators had established presence on all 7 core worlds, overseeing the peaceful transition of power. Unlike the Concordat's rule, the human approach emphasized cooperation and mutual benefit rather than domination. In what had once been the Concordat capital, Earth's ambassador Su-Yun now occupied the offices that had belonged to Vorax. She stood at the window, watching as ships from dozens of previously unknown species arrived in orbit. Minor civilizations that had hidden from the Concordat for millennia, now emerging to establish relations with the new power in the sector. Ambassador, said her aide, the representatives from the Talaxian collective have arrived. They're requesting formal recognition and trade agreements. Sue smiled. Another species the Concordat deemed too primitive to contact properly. Show them in. Throughout human space, the shipyards continued their work. The lesson of New Terra would never be forgotten. The galaxy was full of wonders, but also dangers. Humanity had survived its first true test, emerging stronger than before. On Earth, children now studied the stars with new understanding. The universe was vast and ancient, filled with civilizations that had existed for tens of thousands of years. But in just 2 weeks, humanity had proven something remarkable, that sometimes the youngest species could teach the oldest ones about justice, mercy, and the terrible price of underestimating those they considered primitive. The new galactic order had begun, and at its center stood Earth, no longer hidden, no longer vulnerable, but vigilant and ready for whatever might come next from the depths of space.